credits, 2021 earned income tax credits, and stimulus payments. What does this mean? With the child tax credit, your family could be eligible for up to $3,600 per child under 6 and $3,000 per dependent ages 6 to 17. A new report shows the IRS owes about 4.1 million families credit from a pot worth $3.7 billion. The earned income tax credit can be a little complicated, but it's a benefit available to most families with children.
We finally have some huge news. Congress is a week away from a government shutdown. And experts say that if a government shutdown does happen, then millions of people would be directly affected because stimulus checks will not be sent out. But now, House and the Senate are expected to pass a short-term bill to stop this from happening. It would give negotiators more time to try and secure a broader, full funding deal. Schumer said today that the senators should be prepared to take quick action on a one-week extension just to give lawmakers more time to negotiate. Chuck Schumer also said in remarks on the Senate floor that he anticipates quick action on a stopgap funding bill, which is known as a continuing resolution, so they can give appropriators more time to finish a full funding bill just before the holidays. And negotiators are under pressure to reach an agreement for a broader full funding year, and this can happen imminently. If they can't, then the lawmakers could pass a stopgap bill by the end of the year, an outcome neither party wants, or could punt the decision to next year, when Republicans take over the House. It could complicate the government's ability to avert a shutdown, as it would mean newly empowered House Republicans need to agree with 60 senators and Joe Biden to get this done. But so far, the GOP senators, the top Republicans on the Senate Appropriations Committee, said today that there is more optimistic than there was a week ago about the possibility that negotiators will reach a deal for a full-year funding package, and he warned that he is still guarded because there is no deal reached yet. The governor said, "We haven't reached a solution to some problems, but we're moving in the right direction, and we're probably going to need more time on this." So the approaching deadline for government funding had members of Congress and their staffers from both parties, as well as Biden's administration, to continue to talk through negotiations over the weekend to try and get something done. But over the weekend, Democrats and Republicans are sharing with one another their bottom lines on various fronts, and the White House remained publicly optimistic that an agreement could be reached on an omnibus. But Democrats counter by saying those measures were necessary to help the country recover from the crisis. Now, congressional aides acknowledged to CNN that the weekend talks were better than days prior, which is why Democrats have announced that they will not introduce their own Democratic-only omnibus plan this weekend. For now, a bipartisan deal remains on the table. It remains elusive still. Lawmakers haven't been able to reach an agreement yet, or reach a full-year funding package as of now. But Mitch McConnell said this afternoon that Democrats must drop demands for additional spending on domestic programs in order to get a broad government funding bill passed before the holidays, or risk passing a short-term bill into early next year, after Republicans take control of the House, and will be poised to determine even lower funding levels. But Americans, including hundreds of thousands of federal employees, could soon see an impact of a government shutdown, because according to CBS, most Americans will see and notice the disruption in one way or another. Many national parks would have likely shut down, while mortgage and other loan applications could be delayed, because the IRS could stop verifying income and Social Security numbers. Now, government agencies that are deemed essential would continue despite a shutdown, but still, the last shutdown was December 2018 and January 2019. It was a partial closure since Congress had already acted 12 appropriations bills. But right now, Congress really hasn't done anything. So this means that if nothing is done and no bill is agreed to, then pretty much no stimulus checks yet. I mean, not yet. But now there's a fourth big stimulus check and new deposits been released. Americans can qualify to get at least one more check before the end of the year. So as the holiday season gets into gear, Americans will be struggling financially more than ever because of one thing: it's inflation. Increased prices continue to stretch many families' budgets, with a recent poll finding that a majority of Americans are concerned about how they'll get ahead this year. Luckily, many states are sending out direct checks to help their residents cope with this, and Californians authorized direct payments of up to $1,000 just to help residents cope with inflation this year. The state's franchise tax board said that more than $5 billion has already been distributed through the program. It's known as the middle class tax refund. However, recipients won't see the payments until December or January, and direct deposit payments for those who received Golden State stimulus checks have already been issued to banks. So Californians had already changed their banking information. You should wait and file a 2020 tax return, and you'll receive a debit card that will be mailed between December 17th and January next month.
Tom, thank you. Please sit. I always I've been calling Senator Carper Tommy for 40 years. And I call him Tommy in the morning. Who are you talking about? I'm talking about my buddy, a dear friend, a combat veteran, a guy who serving in the Senate, and he gets it. He gets it. And that's why he's hosted events like this for decades as a U.S. Senator and before that as Congressman. I also want to thank Chris Coons. I'm going to use this mic if I can. Is this one working? I also want to thank Chris Coons and Congresswoman Lisa Brunt Rochester. Thanks for their friendship and their leadership. And John Carney, you're doing a hell of a job, pal. But I've only one regret. He used to work for me. He left and became governor. What the hell? I mean. And General Berry, thank you for having us today. It means so much to me. And I must tell you, I ride by this building a lot, getting Air Force One to fly back and forth to Washington and wherever I'm going. And it always leaves me with a little bit of a lump in my throat. My wife's last warning today, when she's still in Washington, where there's 1,200 people showing up at
funded pensions and for job security. You fought to make our workplaces more safe, more fair, and more productive. In Cleveland, Ohio, in Gary, Indiana, in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, this union made it possible for millions of Americans, whether they were a member of a union or not, they need to realize that. You made it possible for millions of Americans to fight for their rights and their benefits, such that they could buy a home, build a family, and retire with dignity. You.
Washington Democrats have put forth proposals that call for raising taxes on the wealthy while making benefits more generous. The recently House Democrats introduced the Social Security 2100 Act, which would increase Social Security benefits for low-income workers, change the price index COLA that is tied to, and reapply the Social Security payroll tax to individuals making more than $400,000. Since legislation regarding Social Security cannot be passed through reconciliation, any legislation would require support from both the Democrats and Republicans. The Senior Citizens League, a nonpartisan advocacy group, started a pressure campaign to push Congress to send those receiving Social Security additional money. In a letter to leaders of Congress, the group called for one-off $1,400 checks for seniors, and such a measure could help defray the cost associated from some seniors from the 2022 COLA. This is all in reaction to the highest levels of inflation that the American economy is dealing with. Prices across the country are reaching record highs, and for